Yes, I would like to know how selling a chip differs from selling an ecosystem and services. I believe that many non-experts in semiconductors have a hazy understanding of the fact that Intel sells chips. Great, they sell chips. This type of situation involves ongoing expenditures for software platform, services revenue, and system maintenance after the GPUs are sold. Could you describe how this operates for the viewers who aren't actually on the ground here? Oh, how many chips will they sell? Isn't the only question. In fact, it looks more like Apple in the end. Indeed, they sell a lot of iPhones, but what else occurs in terms of money after that? Yes, and I believe that Apple makes a perfect analogy, because many viewers consider it to be the iPhone in contrast to Nvidia. In the end, that's what this business does. Services, which are worth $1.7 trillion, have accounted for the largest portion of Apple's valuation change. There is more to Nvidia than just processors. It's basically like businesses saying, okay, we're going to buy the drink, we're going to buy the meal here. But now we're going to have to pay them an incremental 30 to 35% every year, essentially in perpetuity, on services as well as on infrastructure and software, when you consider the platform overall and architecture. Correct. That is the distinction. To put it another way, Intel never understood, which is why their ticker appears when you look up disaster in a dictionary. Jensen always recognized that the prize was more than simply developing the processors and GPUs, regardless of the reason, the bureaucracy, the fact that they've lost their ability, or something else entirely. It had to do with the architecture in general. They have therefore effectively cornered it when you consider what they have done. To put it another way, this ought to be comparable to attending a baseball game where every meal and beverage you purchase supports the same vendor, right? Finally, from an AI standpoint, that is essentially what they have done. Who builds on top of it today, though? Hyperscalers like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, ServiceNow, Salesforce, Workday, and others serve as its foundation. In other words, Jensen's work is being expanded upon by second, third, and fourth derivatives. Additionally, there is a changeover cost. If your AI services are based on NVIDIA architecture, it's not as easy as saying, we'll just start swapping them in because AMD has a 20% cheaper chip. That's not how it works, in my opinion. Am I correct? Switching might cost 2 to 3 times as much. Correct. Simply said, switching costs are nearly impossible. Compared to SAP, Microsoft, or Workday, that is completely different. You standardize, you move down the list. For this reason, you standardize not just your staff, but also your users and applications. Correct. Since the main point of this story, moving away from the technological edge, which I believe everyone knows Nvidia is far ahead of, is simply the company's execution as a public one, I want to go over some charts. It is just amazing. Dan, I believe you can view the first chart we have up here. For the second quarter of the fiscal year 2025, Nvidia's operating margin is 62.1%. As you can see from the blue chart, they are investing heavily, but their operating margins are still in the low to mid-60s. They are far higher than they were in the 50s 4 or 5 quarters ago, and they aren't dropping off at all. We haven't seen a business do this before, I believe. And you know what? They would resemble prominent older adults in their 80s and 90s living in Del Beach if they weren't making significant investments. Yes, precisely. In their 70s or 80s. The point is, after all, that's what emphasizes it. In essence, the margin profile has doubled, and once they have invested and this enormous expenditure even begins to slow down a little, this is a margin. It's a free cash flow engine. It's historic. For this reason, I still see it as earnings over the next 5 or 6 years. Tell me it costs a lot. Given the scale, it's simply difficult to perceive that. All right, let's examine the earnings. Thus, quarterly revenue is shown in the following chart. By Q2 2025, it had reached $30 billion. Estimates indicate that it will reach $32.8 billion in the upcoming quarter and $36.2 billion in the 2 quarters after that. Once more, it's nearly unthinkable for a business to keep increasing its revenue to this extent after it has grown to be the biggest in the world, yet they managed to do it. These figures are for the quarter. We're looking at a business that is already generating over $100 billion in revenue annually and isn't going anywhere. Well, no. All the calculations point to an annualized cost of $250 billion. I don't understand why it doesn't go there, considering the general need. Jensen and Nvidia are receiving all of these capital expenditure monies. Okay, AMD gets 10% share, you could say, but that doesn't change the fact that the money is being spent. Now, and this is crucial, Jensen discussed it during the call, and we have observed it in customers. The train is the use case ROI as the use cases blow up. The train is not stopped by anything. We used this chart on the channel a few days ago, but I don't have it with me now. What do you think? Our graphic displays the top 5 Nvidia clients. The monetary amount and percentage of their own capital expenditures are displayed on one axis, while the percentage of Nvidia's income that this represents is displayed on the other. For instance, I believe that Microsoft spends about 45% of its capital expenditures on Nvidia, which accounts for 19% of Nvidia's total income. The bears would describe that section as the weakest or least sustainable element of the foundation. However, you disagree with that. Make us more comfortable with that degree of focus. Perhaps the hyperscalers are only in the middle of an end-user story. Stated differently, the hyperscalers, which include Microsoft, are 95% enterprise. To put it another way, if you're a Microsoft shop and you're following this route, it's via Microsoft. No one else will experience what you are. You are traversing other hyperscalers, such as Amazon or Google. In my opinion, focus is more of a perspective when you discuss it today. It's not as though Microsoft is the client. After that, you must descend to the thousands of businesses. I don't think that tells the whole story. The end user is the most important factor. Hyperscalers are essentially acting as a sort of middleman as all of this is happening. They're going by the computer that they're buying from Nvidia. Josh Brown or Dan, if you place your order via Microsoft, Nvidia handles it. Although Microsoft handles the order, you and I placed the original order. Yes, exactly. And Josh, one of the things we'll be witnessing in the next weeks, everything we observe from the standpoint of components, is a rise in demand. When I mention bears, we joke that they limit the AI revolution to spreadsheets in their office towers in New York City. That's probably where a lot of people have missed it. The consumer component has been lacking, particularly now that Apple has taken over. The iPhone 16, the consumer revolution, is now available. For the past 4 years, you have 300 million iPhones that have not been updated. All of that now flows to Apple, followed by OpenAI, and of course Nvidia, who will gain a great deal. Currently too restrictive would be the best market narrative for small caps. 5.5% in contrast to inflation, which is going near 2%, and bringing rates back down to 3%, which is the neutral rate. The market doesn't require the cutbacks to be front-loaded if it thinks so. However, they must think that we are returning to neutrality. That would, in my opinion, be a major motivator for small caps. All right, allow me to ask you some questions regarding mega caps and consumers. How significant will Nvidia's earnings be next week, not just for small caps, but for the entire market narrative? Nvidia is significant because it supports the actual push for productivity through automation and digital tools that is propelling the American economy. That disinflationary trend is crucial. Naturally, all of the major American corporations are based in the United States. I mean, it's a worldwide phenomenon that helps American businesses. Therefore, it is quite crucial in my opinion. However, Nvidia's stock isn't that demanding either, given that it is trading at 26 times forward earnings. I would not recommend, then, sell Nvidia to buy small caps. Nvidia is still a long-term investment, in my opinion. What about the holiday season and consumers who are under a lot of stress, especially those in the working class? At the start of that season, what types of figures do you anticipate seeing? That frequently sets the tone for the performance of retail stocks and other items. Yes, the customer is experiencing stress. Credit cards, auto loans, and adjustable-rate mortgages are all known to have high interest rates and are therefore governed by Fed policy. When consumers are paying these exorbitant rates and inflation is declining, it has been a policy. I believe that firms will become more expa